Okay, good afternoon everyone. My name is Mark Falconer. I'm a DB2 DBA with RBS. I was disappointed earlier when I found out there wasn't a prize for the worst titled session over this weekend, because looking at some of the other ones, I'm pretty sure I've won it hands down. So apologies for that. It started off as a bit of a joke and then it just became for real. So here we are. So we're going to talk about SMurFs and Excel, and just to prove the point, there's good old Papa Smurf. And if you don't get the cultural reference, I'm not going to explain it. So that's the agenda. We'll start off with an introduction and disclaimer, mainly about what this session is not going to be. Just going to talk a quick overview of SMF and DB2. Then we're going to talk about tools and data, and then using the data and where I hope that the end game is for that, for all the data that we have. So first thing to say, it's going to be primarily DB2 orientated and more DBA than sysprog. Apologies for that if it's in the sysprog side of things, but the same principles will apply on basically how you approach analysing any data, really. So these examples here are primarily using DB2 data, but as I say, same principles apply. It's not going to be an in-depth session on SMF, I'm afraid. I think there are plenty of other sessions that have covered that in much more detail. I'm afraid if you already know quite a bit about SMF, you're probably not going to learn anything you didn't already know today. It's also not going to be an in-depth session on performance tuning. Again, that's a whole session in itself. This is basically just to look at how we can take the basics of the data we've got, that we already keep, and use those to identify areas that we can then go into a bit more depth in the tuning. It's also not a session on advanced Excel features. I'm afraid I don't have a huge amount of Excel skills, VB macros, things like that. I'm afraid no, that's not my thing. This is just bare bones of what you can do in Excel, and with a little bit of knowledge, you can start producing some pretty powerful reports and get pretty quickly identify areas where you have a problem. So again, so what is it? It's for people who wish they had this nice shiny new set of golf clubs, nice big golf bag, drivers in there, but you've only really got this. Okay, so you've got a couple of old school clubs there, which will be your DB2 performance database, which we'll get to in a bit, and good old Microsoft Excel. And if I stretch it to the limit, I could say the bag's SMF, but I won't do that. So let's a little bit about RBS, for those who don't know. 5 production data sharing groups. A main data sharing group has got 10 active DB2 members, spread across 10 LPARs. Our peak ever day processing was 680 million KICS transactions a day, although there were some mitigating factors involved in that. Usually averages at 500 million KICS transactions a day, about 20 million distributed transactions a day, 15 million RS, over 200,000 utilities executions per day, and all of which goes to produce over 300 gigabytes of SMF data for DB2 alone. So that's a bit of a problem, because what do you do with all that? Because it's a lot of data, and if you don't have a lot of fancy third-party vendor tools to help you process it, how can you go about making the best use of it? So, what is SMF? So, it's a systems management facility by IBM. Gathers measurement data from all your sources, so your KICS, your DB2, batch jobs, MQ WebSphere, and it does tend to follow the old adage about if you don't measure it, you can't manage it. So there are there's there's a lot of data in there. You use it for system reporting, for historical analysis. Obviously, you get capacity planning, and you've also got stuff to do with SLAs. The right-hand side basically is just the general flow of how I guess your shop will process its SMF data. So in the left-hand side there, you've got the kind of roads into it, your kicks transactions, DB2, which all go into the SMF buffers, and then split out into data sets if you're still using the old style SMF data sets, or you've got log streams, which are fairly new, and quite a lot of people are going along with that. To extract the data from there, you've either got SMF dump programs, either the DP one for the traditional data set or the DL one for the system logger. They'll generally be put into your SMF dump data sets. Most shops will split them into DB2, kicks, whatever, and then you've got your user written analysis reports and routines, and that's primarily what this session is going to be looking at. That number 7 there. That's going to assume you've all got this other part already set up. So, a little bit about SMF records. So each SMF record is assigned a type. So 0 to 127 are reserved for IBM, 1 to 82.255 for user records, if you want to externalize stuff to SMF yourself. The most commonly used types, job statistics, is type 30, although it's not strictly speaking job statistics, it's address-based statistics. RMF is type 70 through 79, KICS 110, MQ 115, 116, and the ones we're here to really look at today, or we're going to be using today. These examples are the DB2 SMF records, which are of type 100, 101, 102. 100s are primarily statistics, 101s are counting, and 102s are usually performance. A lot of the SMF types have got subtypes. I know RMF's got quite a lot of subtypes in there, which I'm not going to go into as part of this presentation. Okay, so how do we get data from DB2 into SMF? So there are a number of things you have to switch on that control the amount of data and the type of data that will be stored in SMF. I guess I should also say there are other destinations you can send trace output, but we're only talking about SMF today. So you've got the different types. You've got statistics, accounting, you've got audit, performance, monitor, and global. We're primarily going to use statistics and accounting types, so I'll speak a bit more about them. But your audit trace types, to track audit data for applications such as unauthorized access attempts, documentation of access against audited objects, and user ID activity. The monitor trace is primarily switched on by your third-party monitoring tools or your IBM monitoring tools. We're not going to talk about that either. Performance traces are usually, you would only switch performance traces on when you're looking for a specific problem. Not so much used for trend analysis and KPIs, which we can try and look at today. And global trace, it's a very detailed trace of path length and DB2 module use, and I think I've read somewhere that it's so verbose that even switching it on is likely to cause more trouble than you're actually trying to diagnose, and you should never switch it on without direction from IBM. So yeah, so the different trace types, and under there are trace classes. And trace classes, they consist of IFCAD IDs, so instrumentation facility component IDs. There's a little graph here about how these can interact. So the SMF 100 types for statistics are made up of IFCADs 1, 2, 202, 230, 225, for example. Accounting, SMF type 101, It's got the main SMF, it's got the main IFKID number 3 for accounting, and also there's many other IFKIDs that are part of that. Okay. So, what do we use this data for? So, primarily, the DB2 accounting data, you'll be looking at, it's for looking at application level issues, for individual thread level issues. It can be, you can look at it from a very high level, or you can also drill down to a very low level of detail. It's also got package level information, so you can go down to the program level. It won't go down to SQL statement level. You need to switch on performance traces for that, which can be very expensive. So in general, you just have the package level information, and within that, you've got these different counters. So you've got the thread identification, the main ones. You've got elapsed time, CPU. You get wait times. You've got information on locking activity, your group buffer pool and buffer pool activity, data sharing locking, otherwise known as global locking, and also that lower level detail in package and DBRMs executed, and also information on your distributed thread activity. Okay. Any questions on that so far? Okay, so what we'll look at next is just when the accounting data gets written to SMF and when it's produced. So in general, accounting data is produced for a number of events, and primarily when a thread ends, it deallocates or upends. So you can see, point over the top one, so program starts, first SQL, program ends, thread deallocates, you get accounting record, then another program starts again, you get another SQL, thread deallocates, and you get another accounting record. Or it's also when a thread is reused. For example, in KICS, the accounting record won't be cut until there's a re-sign on, until that thread's reused. So, and it won't be done at commit point. So your first SQL, you've got commit, there's no accounting record cut. Then you get a re-sign on, you get accounting record cut, a bit more done, commit's done, then there's another re-sign on, the accounting record gets cut, and then the thread finally deallocates, and you get your accounting record cut. There are a couple of gotchas sometimes within this. Class 1 elapsed time, which I haven't gone into yet. I'll explain a bit more about what that is in a few slides. Class 1 time is basically your application elapsed time, start to finish. The Class 1 elapsed time can include wait time within a region for a protected entry thread while it's waiting for reuse. In fact, I think I've got a slide that shows that. Yep, here. So you got your thread, it's been created, the commit point's been done, the thread just sits there, it's not doing anything, it's idle, so you get your region idle time, you get a re-sign on, you get your account record cut, and then your thread eventually does deallocate your account record cut. But all this time while the KICS region's idle, you're racking up Class 1 elapsed time when it's not actually doing anything. So just something to be aware of. And also, if you have multiple KICS transactions that are defined on the same DB2 entry in KICS, and your account rec's not a task, sometimes you will not get a new account record cut for a transaction that comes in after that thread has been allocated. So it'll all count under the KICS transaction that initiated the create of the thread. So it's just something to be aware of as well. You won't always see all the records that you think you might be about to see. Okay, for DDF records, it's commit time. If you've got an active DBATS, if you've got DBATS set up, probably CMStat, type in active, which if you've got a lot of distributed activity, I'm sure you already will have. So as soon as the DBAT is acquired, does a bit of work, commits, and then the account record's cut, that DBAT then becomes available for another transaction to use, and then pick it up and then as soon as it commits, it'll cut the accounting record. RRS can cut it at commit time if you've got accounting info commit set, and if you've got no open held cursors. Another thing that will cut your accounting records, especially for DDF and RS, is for using accounting roll-up, and you do that by setting the AccuMac to any value greater than 1, and you'll get a record cut for whichever aggregation type you've chosen for that thread. I think last time I looked, there were about 17 different combinations of Acum UID that you could aggregate your accounting records by. Great for saving space if you've got an awful lot of if you've got a lot of distributed activity and disk space is a premium, or you're worried about how much SMF data you're gathering. It's a good option, but you lose any granularity of problem investigation once you've done that, because you've got X number of threads all rolled up into a single account record. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, so let's look at now statistics, where the accounting records, they are event driven. In SMF, statistics are interval driven, so they get cut every a set period. It's been default 1 minute since DB2 10. I recommend these all get started with DB2. It's a ZPARM that you can enable that'll start that. Recommend you start classes 1, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's not a great deal of overhead to having these active. 7 or 8 are also very useful. It relates to DDF location stats and dataset I/O activity. Okay, so whereas accounting is looking at application level data and thread level data, DB2 statistics are at the subsystem level, and they gather a lot of data. There's a lot in there. I'm not going to go through all these, but these are the stats that are among the stats that are gathered at the subsystem level. So if you're looking for application specific level information, you're not going to find it here. But it certainly can be useful when you're looking at application accounting data to tie up with what you've got in your statistics reports as well. Okay, so this is what we can gather when we're gathering accounting and statistics. But what can we do with it? I say it's all sitting in files, it's all getting held somewhere, but what can we do with it? So this is where the performance database comes in. I would hope we've all got one. Do we all use performance database? Yep. Okay. So multiple vendors do supply their own version. I've only ever used IBM's and CA. We use CA's. So at RBS. But they all follow the same basic form. So you've got your general accounting record, which will be one per accounting record that's been cut, as we spoke about earlier, and just when they're cut. But for each of those, you'll get a row on these child tables for group buffer one row for each group buffer pool used, one row for each package used, one row for each DDF location for each buffer pool. So it's group buffer pool. The accelerator side of things I'm not too familiar with in terms of performance database, but your vendor tool will generally supply those tables. So you get the same for your accounting tables, and you get your statistics tables as well, and they'll supply methods of extracting the data and then loading it in. So it can be a bit of a challenge if you're using a different vendor's version, because you need to then find a way of mapping what they've called a column back to how IBM have named that column and the SMF field name or diff kit field name. That can be quite a challenge sometimes, because sometimes you don't, what you think you're looking at is not what you're looking at. Nevertheless, it can be quite flexible. If you want to keep every accounting record, yeah, you can load them all in there. Great, if you've got the space. At RBS with 300 gigabytes of SMF data, that's not really a day. That's not really possible. So you can aggregate it by interval. At RBS, we aggregate by hour, because it's just the only way to do it really, that amount of data. But we do have a separate table that keeps exceptions. So you define that for every accounting record that took over a second DB2, then we do keep the detail on that. But it's flexible, and you keep as much historical data as you like. I would recommend some custom indexing though. Some of the supplied indexes I've found are not the best based on the kind of standard ways or kind of standard searches you'll be doing. I find, you'll either be searching a plan or a correlation name or an auth ID or a connection ID, and with a date and time field. So you can get your indexing pretty much as you like it. So one of the tools in the bag was the performance database. The other one, you really need it's useful if you've got a tool that you can query your performance database and get data out in a CSV format easily. Data Studio does it. I've got just a little picture of Data Studio there. But any tool that you can use to get things out of a CSV file, you can use. It's can be quite tricky if you're going to try using unload utility, because unload you won't have your column names in there. So trying to map up just columns in a data set with what they actually map to can be tricky. So if you can, I would recommend you use one of the pointy clicky tools, as some people call them. So yeah, so I recommend you, if you're going to use your performance database, have some standard SQLs ready to go that just pick out accounting data, general accounting data, package level, event account data, buffer pool, statistics, etc. I haven't included any SQLs in this presentation because different vendors have got different column names, so they may not necessarily match up what you've got in your shop. But if you want me to, I'm happy to share them. If you want to contact me, I'll share the ones that I've got. That's no problem. So it's generally on a general approach side, what we want to do is you want a top-down approach to looking at problems, looking at issues. Generally speaking, you've got a lot of application layers in the mix, things that are not counted in DB2. So by the time you get down to DB2, it goes back out again in the application layer. I have said there, you'll usually just be proving the issue is not in DB2. I don't know if that's your experience, but that tends to be. Yeah, it usually kicks people that say it's in DB2, yeah, that's right. Apologies to any kicks people. Okay, so the idea is that you start looking at it from a fairly high level. And when I say high level, it depends how your shop classifies its applications. Some shops have got a single production DB2 plan that they then split up into various collections underneath that signify the applications, or you can, some places, for example RBS, each application has got its own plan. So you can start from that very high level. You start off with plan level information, and then you can drill down basically from there, from plan to transaction to program. So I said I was going to talk a little bit about the accounting classes. So what I mean by accounting class 1, 2 and 3. So what I've tried to do here is just map up what we'd see in a kind of classic accounting report, where you've got your timers and just how they map to classes 1, 2 and 3. So I said you've got application, you've got class 1, which is your application time, and that's from the start of the create thread when it either terminates or abends, whatever. So it includes, I don't know if you can see the colours, so you've got lapse and CPU time. Class 2 time is time spent in DB2 doing work, so that includes the full elapsed time, and also it's split by CPU, and then you get your class 3 time, which are your suspensions, and they're all listed down the left, down the right there. So main ones are, it's lock latch wait time, synchronous I/O, lock contention, global contention. They're all listed there. So I guess the idea here is that you've got this information that's at thread level. So what do you do when you've got 17,000 of those a second going through your system? I don't think you're going to write a accounting report and then just trawl through each of those looking for problems.
But you should say that customer last week sent me one of these, which I imported to Microsoft Word as a report, and it was 852 pages.
Yeah. Well, I can see how you could just have sent you a single.
And that was 8 minutes of data.
That doesn't sound. I thought it would actually been more than that. Oh well. Okay. Well, so I'm sure it wasn't very pleasant. Yeah, I'm sure it wasn't very pleasant having to go through that. Yeah. Okay.
Is that just one transaction?
That one there? Yeah. It's one transaction.
1.7 seconds DB2 latch.
Yeah, this is one of our latch problem ones. Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. It was an in-house question. He was asking, Colin was asking if it was a single transaction, and yes, it is. So this is actually an example of where your class 1 elapsed time seems very high, but this is one of these transactions. It's a protected entry thread. It spent quite a bit of time waiting on that thread being reused, so it's got a very high class 1 elapsed time. You could look at that and think, well, there's a bit of a problem there, but it's a bit misleading. However, as Colin just pointed out there, 1.71 seconds internal DB2 elapsed time isn't great, and we still haven't got to the bottom of that. So, but anyway, this is purely it's just for illustration. So let's just quickly move on. Okay, so this is just another way of looking at it. And I should have said that most of my pictures are out of the transaction subsystem monitoring tuning red book, which I thoroughly recommend. It's got some fantastic information there. I should have actually had it as a reference, but I forgot to put it in. I think it came out a few years ago. It's a really excellent book. So again, this is showing how you break down, how you interpret what's in here. So your total thread activity time, you get time spent outside of DB2, so it's class 1 minus class 2, but again, beware, it's not always what you think. Your processing time, which is the actual CPU, which includes your general processor CPU time, and also can include zip if you've got any zip offload there. You've got your waiting time, which is your class 2 elapsed minus class 1 CPU, and eventually you'll see here that your total class 3 suspension time is in there, and then the not counted is, let me get this right, so not counted is that plus that minus that, because there's some things in DB2 that DB2 doesn't keep track of, and that's your not counted time. In my experience, not counted time is generally always waiting on CPU cycles. So if you've got an application where it's CPU bound, then you're more likely to see high not counted time, and that is accounted to waiting on CPU cycles. So you may have seen this little diagram before. It's just a way of visualising where these times and counters start and stop. So your application time starts here. You create your thread. Your class 1 time starts. Class 2 time starts. You go into DB2. do some work. So you get your class 2 elapsed and your CPU counter burning. You then go back to the application, these counters stop. You then come back into DB2, do a little bit more, come down to here, then you're going to wait for a lock. So this then goes into class 3 time suspension, then eventually passes back to DB2, do a bit more work. This time you're going to wait for I/O, and this again adds on to class 3 time, and then you finally got your update commit suspension, which is your service class, goes under service class wait time there. And I think it just shows where the interaction is between where the counter start and the counter stop. Any questions on that at all?
I think the odd thing is sometimes when you say the commit, often wondering what the heck is going on with the non-commit time, because generally it should be instantaneous on these.
Yeah, so the question was if you see a long suspension on update commit. The query was, it's a bit odd. I haven't really seen that very often, I have to say.
Yeah, it's when you see that, that's kind of,
Well,
it's really odd.
Well, I'd say if it's high, then I would say maybe look at the commit rate on the application or the batch job. Because if it's a batch job and it's committing every single update, then there's a lot of overhead to that. So if the overhead of update commit and it's doing a lot of updating, then yeah, I would look at the commit rate on that. That may be a problem. Okay, so as I said to you before, accounting reports, they're very verbose. There's a lot of data there per transaction. It can be difficult to see the big picture in detailed reports. Summaries are okay, but they can be too high level. So this is where Excel comes into it and can help you out by visualizing your data. So, what's the time? Okay. Right, so just a couple of, I don't need to say this, recommendations. Take a methodical approach. Start at a high level. If you don't actually know what you're looking for yet, say for example your system programmers or your capacity team are saying we're seeing some high CPU utilization on one of our LPARs or across all our LPARs, what's going on? Then this is just a way of approaching that problem. So start at a high level. Others may not find this, but I find that almost 95% of issues you can diagnose from just looking at the data patterns. That's just a personal opinion. If you've got aggregated tables, then just start there. If not, then aggregate results by the second. If you're looking at a very high throughput transaction, you can do it by the minute or hour. Look at the class 1, 2, 3 fields, as I said earlier, and if you need to, have your own SMF dump jobs and file extracts ready to go, because I don't know about anyone else, a lot of shops don't offload their SMF data until they only do it once a day. So if you're asked to look at a problem, you then have to say, can you wait till tomorrow when the SMF data is available? A lot of times that's really not acceptable. So yeah, I would have your own jobs just sitting ready to go. So if somebody says we've had a problem in the last hour, just run your own extract for say an hour, and then load the data using the production jobs that you've already got into your own set of tables, and then you can start building the visualizations from there. So what do I mean by that? Back to the accounting record layout. So this is an extract taken from the performance database, and I've just tried to show here how the columns map to what's in the accounting record. So I've aggregated this is for a single transaction. I've aggregated it by second. So the ones in blue here are your class 1 times, the ones in red are your class 2, and then in green, that's all your class 3 suspension times. So the object here is just visualize that in a timeline with your time series set at whatever works for you, but it could be second, could be minute, could be hour. So the way to do that is plot a pivot chart. Now pivot charts, I couldn't get the animations to work very well here every time I couldn't get the little drop downs to show, so yeah, that drove me potty trying to get that to work. But yeah, so if you click the pivot table and then choose the pivot chart, it will automatically select the entire spreadsheet that you've got, and you'll get a field list on the right hand side of the screen. Now what you want to do is you want to set your axis, and the axis for this is going to be by time, because that's what you want to see. And say for example in this one we just want to see the total class 2 elapsed time. So you move that into the values. The report filter, you don't really need that at the moment, it's just there for completeness. So once you do that, so you're now plotting your time against class 2 time, which is behind that, and there you get a picture by second of total in DB2 time. So that's where it's spent, but we can't really see how that's split up. So what we can do is we can then use a stacked graph to put all the pieces of the other aspects of class 2 time, class 3 time into the graph, just to try and bring it to life a bit. So instead of putting class 2 elapsed time in, you just get rid of that, and then you put in all the counters that then make up that total class 2 elapsed time, which are, it's all these bits here. So we want to put that into the graph. So once we do that, you get that. There's some not quite right, because the total there doesn't match the one previously. It's because by default Excel won't stack them to give you the total. These are all individual lines, not related to each other at the moment. So what you want to do is you want to relate them to each other by choosing a different type of graph. So you switch it to stacked view, and once you do that, you can then see the complete picture of what's happening in DB2 at a 1 second interval for that transaction. And it just so happens that this one, it's primarily CPU and also not counted time. So it's CPU bound, so it's almost certainly you're going to wait for CPU cycles while you do that processing. And to bring it to life even more, so that you've just got your time spent in DB2 here, what you can then do is you can add the number of executions and get your throughput for that as well. Now, as soon as you add that in, it gets obscured, because it's a completely different counter. So yeah, so it's a count, whereas your class 2 times are a time. So you want to then split it into separate axes. So you do that. You just right click on the series and just choose secondary axis, and just to differentiate even more, you can set your throughput or your executions as a line type graph instead of a chart type graph, and there you've got a nice little representation of what's going on in that application, second by second. You can see the throughput. The throughput is, it's gone up a little bit, but I wouldn't say it's gone up enough to really explain what's happened with the increase in the class and your in DB2 time. So another way to look at it is, okay, maybe you just want to see your average response time for your application. So therefore, you just take out your class or those counters, and you can just go straight for a average response time, which it's as good a indicator of your system health as anything. But that's at the thread level. So what if you want to know what is even digging down even further, and that you can then look at the package level detail. So this is another extract for the same transaction, same time period, but it's at package level. Now I tried to do this by second, and it blew up, because there is a limit in Excel as just to how much data you can put into it, unfortunately, especially when you've got a single transaction that calls this many programs. That's an online transaction that calls over 230 programs in it. I would love to ask the person that designed that what they were thinking, because I don't know how you really manage that on an ongoing basis. So I've had to aggregate this one by minute, but essentially you see the pattern is the same. So this NDB2 time is actually spent at the package level in the, well, as you can see, there's two packages there that are especially consuming.
What's the brown metric again?
Sorry, this?
Yeah, the area of the graph coloured orangey brown.
This one?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay, sorry. So previously, this graph was just the counters were in DB2 times. This graph is purely in DB2 elapsed time by package. Yeah, elapsed time by package. So you can see all the. So there's just two packages are taking up predominantly all of that elapsed time. Because when you're doing stack graphs, you can only stack one series against each other. Yeah, so breaking that down even further, the graph just becomes a bit of a mess, really. Okay, so
Can you change the colours? I mean, you've got up there, I don't know how many colours you've got for those 200 packages, but I'm just thinking, how do you tell some of those, it's like underground, one's like brighter brown, one's dull brown.
yeah, so the question is, can you change the colours to make them a bit more vivid? And yes, the answer is yes. You can just right click on within the graph area. So you just right click on that there and change the colour. Make it bright red if you want. You can also to zoom in on individual packages. You can just choose the drop down list and you'll get a list, and you get quite quickly. You can drop down and just look at individual programs and packages. Because as you can see, if it wasn't for those two very badly behaved ones, it would be probably quite difficult to tell the difference. Okay, so I've got a couple of case studies now that I'm just going to run through. So, capacity team spot high CPU usage from a Kix region, running the BR02 transaction. So we go back our performance database. We go back 6 months. So just go back 6 months, plot out your primary class 2, class 3 times. You can plot them, and you can see quite clearly round about here. We start to see quite a large increase in a CPU. You know, this is goes right up to like 60,000 CPU seconds, which is pretty high. So you can see that, and also when you plotted the transaction count on the secondary axis, you can see okay, there are a few little spikes there, but relatively there's no correlation between transaction throughput and the CPU increase that we're seeing. So we need to dig in a bit closer on this now. So you now want to look at class 7 and 8 times, which are the package times. So what I've done here is I've extracted the package level information, and it's pretty clear. Once you plot that by day and by package and by CPU, there's only one culprit there, really. So why has that happened? So you then start to look at, okay, is it an access path problem? Well, no, that package hadn't been rebound recently, but when we checked RTS, real-time stats tables for volumes against the tables, we see it's gone from very little to a lot, and the access path was inefficient with some table space scans, and therefore, you know, you're doing a lot more for a lot less. So, new index was added, and can you guess where? Yes, when it was. So everything went back to normal then. Okay, so it's just a little case study how just very quickly you can identify a problem and get a solution to it. But Sometimes it's about looking for what's not there as opposed to as well as what is there. So get reports from our online branch diary booking application, saying the application servers, the JVMs are filling up, and they're getting 60 plus second response times from DB2. But initial looks in DB2, you know, this is our response time in DB2 per second, you know, a couple of spikes here, a couple of seconds. Nothing anywhere like the 60 plus second response times the application is saying they're getting. So another way to look at it is look at what's not there. So just straight from SMF data, you can pull out the number of transaction counts, and we could group it by the server names that we're being told the problems were coming from. So as you can see, we've got a 40, 50, 60 transactions a second up until this point, coming from 2 of these servers, and then it just drops off to nothing. But we've not had an increase in DB2 response time there either. So at that point, we're thinking, well, the issue's not really in DB2. We don't have any issues in max DBATs. We don't have any issues in error messages in the logs. Still appears to be outside of DB2. But then a slightly different way of looking at it was looking at the connections by member. So we've got 3 main members. We've only got 3 members that take any DDF work in RBS. And there we can see there's a very pronounced skew towards one of these members, DPA2. And then when we have the problem, there seems to be a smattering of connections attempting to go in to the other 2 members. Why is that? Is it a sysplex distributor issue, or is it a firewall problem? Lo and behold, it turns out that the IP addresses of these 2 members were not in the firewall rules for that application. And the reason we are seeing some transactions come through is because when a transaction will come in, it comes into the group dviper, which is in the firewall rule, and then it'll get routed to one of those 2 members that weren't in the firewall rules. When that connection was through the group dviper initially, that worked. But if it was then if it came back out and then tried to go direct, which is how distributed processing works, it got knocked back. But none of that was visible anywhere, either in DB2 or in the application logs. Application logs, as far as they were concerned, they were just getting long response times. So just demonstrates how just looking at these data patterns can lead you down routes that it would probably take a lot longer to work that out had we not had these very simple visualizations. So just been looking at problem resolution, where you know you've got a problem. Use the data, create key performance indicators for your shop. There are any number of ones you can choose. You know, for us, you can look at your subsystem address space CPU example up there. You can look at your storage stats for active threads. Look at your planned package storage above and below the bar. You look at dataset open close activity, and through plotting these out, you can get a very clear idea of how your system should be behaving under normal conditions. And then, well, we'll get to being a bit more predictive in a minute. Although I say, because unfortunately, this data there is usually a bit of lag between getting it out of SMF and getting it into a tool like Excel or whatever you choose to use. So that's just some subsystem transaction, subsystem KPIs, some examples of application KPIs. You can just plot your throughput rates of your main transactions, which are down at the top there. So that's quite an old one. We're a bit higher than that on transactions per second now. I think on average we do about 12,000 transactions a second in our main banking one. This is just another example where you can then plot your individual transactions and then split it up into individual DB2 counters. So that's just some examples of KPIs you can use using the techniques that we've looked at already. So endgame. So currently, as I said, this is all reactive. Reports, are generated usually a day later, and real time eventually predictive. I think it's got to be the ultimate goal. So you've got real time SMF streaming at the moment. A couple of providers have that, where you can stream directly into Splunk. I know Splunk's primarily for non-structured data, or seen to be primarily for non-structured data, but it seems ideal for streaming your main SMF, your main IFKID records straight into Splunk, and you've got almost a real-time ticker tape of how your systems are behaving. And there's now machine learning on Z. Michael did a really good talk earlier on where we see that going, applying machine learning and data science techniques directly to SMF data. It can provide those real-time operational insights, the stuff that we have to go and dig around and hunt for and look for, spend ages doing. That could all be there at a click and in real time.
We do also have a D2 system health tree monitor built on machine learning on Z, so we'll share that with you as well. So it's a whole load of the sorts of things you've been talking about, but with the predictive element and then the system red green health tree.
Yeah.
To show you that. So
I've seen that. Yeah. So Karen's just saying that IBM have got it's almost a KPI template health monitor that does use these techniques for machine learning, and that's essentially where yeah. So
the ultimate end game is to replace what you did with machine learning.
Well, I still think So Colin's saying that the issue is that you eventually will be doing yourselves at a job. Essentially, is that what you're saying? Yeah. I still think they'll need you still need that expertise on the ground. I think, data scientists know the mathematics and the statistics part about it. They don't understand mainframe data, so they will still need, I think, IT professionals to help them work with that data.
Can you just flick back to case study 2? Where's the first one? Yeah, that one.
Yep.
If you look at that data, you'll see there's a number of spikes.
Yeah.
That occur exactly on the minute interval. If there are any other sites that have got a similar pattern to that, then can you please get in touch with us?
Yeah. So Matt's highlighted their spikes that are probably on the minute interval there.
I usually look at APA reports for finding any performance improvements in the codes. So these days I'm looking at things. Mostly time goes in weight of system IO operations or like this.
Uh-huh.
More than the SQL processing time and stuff. So how can we reduce that system time, wait time?
So you say it's this question that in your experience you see mostly I/O wait time.
IO wait time.
Wait time.
Mostly where I'm working in, mostly I see 90% or 80% of the time goes in system IO operations.
And is that
And I can't see, if it goes in SQL processing or something, I can do something like timely join or something for improving the performance on programs. But if it's taking more time in system IO operations, I'm not sure how to suggest my team to improve on.
well, if it's a case of the number of I/O requests that are being done, then you probably need to look at your buffer pool sizes, and just check that they're big enough, and check that your thresholds for retaining data in them are optimal. If you're seeing an extended I/O wait time for the same number of requests, then you may have a problem with your disk subsystem somewhere. But I'm going to guess that it's primarily down to the number of IOs you're doing, and therefore I would look at your buffer pools.
Yeah, but it's again cost involved if I suggest for increasing the size.
You don't have to change the physical size. You can actually simulate what you get. So you'll see the benefits from reporting on it by changing the buffer pool size internally, but without physically changing it. So you can predict what results would be.
Yeah. So what Colin, just for the benefit of the camera,
I'll try applying it. Thank you so much.
the question was generally about if you're seeing high I/O wait time, then either check your buffer pools, or there's a new feature within DB211 where you can do buffer pool simulation, where you basically trick DB2 into thinking that your buffer pools are much bigger than they are, and DB2 will estimate how many IOs that will save you, physical IOs that is. So what you want to check is it down to physical IO as opposed to just number of actual get pages, and just check your buffer pool hit rates. I would check that.
Don't lose sight of the fact that avoiding a physical IO saves you CPU.
Absolutely. Yeah, so the difference between, I think, the difference between a buffer pool hit and an IO is about 1 million instructions, I think. So, yeah, any IO that can be saved is good.
Justify spending more money on memory quantities.
Okay, so I think oh, right, okay.
I mean, did you always consider that you're going to move it from the mainframe to PC and Excel? I mean, just that data transfer from the mainframe to PC, and then you've got all this data on a PC. When the last time I ran a huge SQL program in Excel, it takes like 5 minutes on my laptop. So producing these drafts, does that take time? So have you got a chunky device to do that?
No, generally speaking, I can get enough data about 6 meg. A file about 6 meg.
Okay.
There's generally enough data there to let you. So Excel will still work. I found, there are always ways to reduce the amount of data you're returning, and.
I just wonder if you consider like writing in Rex on the mainframe, running mainframe cycles, and running Rex to get the data that you want. So the data would be specifically what you want. You can then put that into Excel, and that would take a shorter time to get it from the mainframe into Excel, and it would running in Excel would be instantaneous.
Well, I have to say, I find just using IBM Data Studio, you run the query. I mean, obviously you're running the query from Data Studio on your laptop, but all the work's been done in DB2 at the back.
Yeah. And are you storing these graphs somewhere, or are you running them and deleting them?
No, I just keep them. It's probably why our share drives are filling up. But okay, well, thanks everyone for listening. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.